Hello everyone, Stjepan here. I'll continue the series on the Sicilian defense with probably the unsoundest, if that's a word, opening black would choose against the bishop knight attack line with knight to g5. And that's the Traxler counterattack. Now, I've been under the impression that the opening is a draw for black. However, it's only a draw if white takes the bishop on f7, and we are going to get into that line. So after bishop takes c5 and knight takes f7, black sacrifices the bishop back on f2, and if white takes, king takes f2, then it's a draw probably, but white can decline that. And I found out in my studies recently that there's actually no way for black to have a solid game if white knows what he's doing. So I've changed my mind a lot about the Traxler counterattack, and I've figured out that while it's risky to play for white and white could get in trouble, there are some example games in which black managed to win. If white knows what he's doing, if white manages to learn 10 or 15 moves of theory, then white is just winning. The engines give a huge advantage to white, +2 or more if white plays perfectly. So we're going to cover two lines, bishop takes and knight takes. Let's get into the opening first. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to c4, the Italian, knight to f6, the two knights defense, and now white goes for the knight attack with knight to g5, and black doesn't play the usual move, d5, which either leads to the main lines of the knight attack or to the fried liver attack or to the or to some other lines, but black plays the Traxler counterattack with bishop to c5, and this move seems as if a beginner has just made an opening blunder. However, it's much more complicated than that. Now, if you turn on the engine, it's +2 for white. It's obviously winning right out of the opening. So if you see this in a tournament game, if you're prepared, if you have enough time on the clock, then you should really win that 100% of the time. However, there are examples of grandmasters who didn't win this with the white pieces. And as I said, one line, which is one of the main lines, actually ends in a draw most often. So okay, there are two possible moves, either bishop takes f7 or knight takes f7. Now, knight takes f7 might seem visually better, and you are forking the queen and the rook, but bishop takes is actually what I think a better move, because you win a pawn safely, and knight takes leads to all sorts of complications. We're going to go over bishop takes first. So the idea behind bishop takes f7 is that you get to win a pawn with check, and then you retreat your bishop back, and that's as simple as I could put it. So bishop takes f7 check, king to e7 is the best move, and now you retreat your bishop. There are two best squares. Some people have played d4, which is also a move, and then you get to play e5 and open up the position even more, but it's not good. You could retreat your bishop to c4, but that's a very rare move, and I believe that it doesn't serve... It's not as useful as the other two moves. So there are two moves, either bishop to d5, keeping the defense of your e4 pawn if h6 comes, or bishop to b3, which is even safer than that. I myself play bishop to d5, and I always play bishop f7, if you wondered, the bishop sacrifice line, which isn't really a bishop sacrifice. So bishop to b3 is, let's say, a sideline, and I prefer bishop to d5, but bishop to d3 is fine. If h6 comes, then you do lose your e4 pawn, but still it's fine. So let's say h6. If you turn on the live book, there's actually no games from this position. You could go back here and win an exchange after h6, so h6 immediately doesn't work. But after bishop to b3, the player with the black pieces usually plays rook to f8 to prevent that, so now h6 is sort of a threat. But white doesn't react to that. White castles, because if h6, the knight could retreat, and you have a huge attack along the e-file. The main move is d6, opening up black's bishop, knight to c3, defending e4, queen to e8, getting the queen to the king side if possible. And now knight d5 check, some liquidation, knight takes d5 and e takes d5. You want to remove the knight from c6. You don't really want to take with the bishop, even though your bishop would be defended, because this knight on c6 is actually a great defender of black's position. So now knight to d4, c3. You want to trade your bishop because it's blocked. I'm sorry, whoever is challenging me, I'm recording right now, so I always decline challenges while recording. Sorry about that. Knight takes b3, a takes b3, h6, chasing the knight away, d4. You can see that white has a perfectly fine position. If you turned on the engine, it's more than +1, and I believe that the extra pawn is very useful here. Yeah, white has all 8 pawns, and the fact that they are doubled in the center isn't really that meaningful, because they are very strong, controlling a lot of key squares. So bishop to b3 is definitely a fine line after bishop takes f7 and king to e7. Bishop to b3 is a fine move. However, I would recommend that after king to e7 you play bishop to d5, just not allowing black to have any counterplay on the e4 pawn, and it's going to take a lot of time to remove the knight and play c6, so your knight is fine here. If black decides to take, you're perfectly happy because you've just gained the tempo, and the knight is going to have to move from c6. So the main move here is rook to f8. Once again, white was threatening knight to f7, and here white castles. Your e4 pawn is defended, h6 doesn't really work, and now d6 once again the main move, knight to f3 going back, and bishop to g4. This is the source of white's counterplay, and black's counterplay. Sorry, black is often going to have a lot of pressure along the f file, but I believe that the extra pawn and the fact that black's king is stuck either on e7 or somewhere else is more than enough compensation. Now the position continues. Bishop takes c6, b takes c6, d3, defending your e4 pawn for good, queen to d7, bishop to e3 developing, forcing a trade basically. The bishop would suck on b4, and you could play a3, b4 anyway to exchange the bishop. So now bishop takes e3, f takes e3, putting some more defenders on the f3 knight and preparing to play perhaps queen to e1, getting along this diagonal or here. So now king f7. The black king basically wants to tuck itself away in the corner. So now h3 chasing the bishop, bishop e6. This is the best move, however it does lose the bishop, but you could argue which piece is better. Knight g5, king g8, knight takes e6, queen takes e6. If you count the material, black has 7 pawns, white has 8, and black doesn't really have a smidget of compensation for the pawn. I mean, okay, one thing that's better in white's position, that's worse in white's position than in black's position is the knight. The knight on f6 is definitely better than the knight on b1, but in 2 moves the knight is going to get to f3 and the position is going to be completely symmetrical almost, but white has an extra pawn. So this is the bishop sack line, and I think this is the best way to play against the Traxler. It's just safe. It doesn't leave black any counterplay. King e7, bishop to d5. Just retreat your bishop to d5, defend your e4 pawn, and whatever black does, you're going to have a solid extra pawn and no compensation for black. The fact that it's really hard for white to go wrong in this position makes it very easy to play. The other variation, which we're going to see, in which white captures on f7 with the knight, could get really risky for white, and I think that white could lose those positions even though he's better. But bishop takes f7 is a solid move. You take with check, bring your bishop back, have an extra pawn, and convert if possible. Just stay calm. You are going to have more time because black is going to have to struggle to find some counterplay, and I think it's really hard to find counterplay with these pieces. It's not as if you have 4 rooks and 3 queens. You have bishop, knight, 2 rooks and a queen, and all of white's pieces are in the defense, and this is just fine. I mean, rook f2, knight to f1, knight to g3, and knight to f5 are even a plan. You could adopt a lot of normal gioco piano games or normal Spanish games plans and just create an attack. The king is on e7 and you're a pawn down. Why would anybody play this with the black pieces? So okay, let's get to the other variation. I'm sorry, I'm just getting notifications from Lichess that I'm getting challenges. Sorry, I just have to decline that. Okay, so the other line, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6, knight g5, the knight attack, bishop c5, the Traxler. And now the engine thinks that taking with the knight is the best move. In fact, you can see that if I turn on the engine, taking with the knight is +2, taking with the bishop is +1 point something. So taking with the knight is better, but from a human perspective, it's really much harder to play. And I've played it several times. I've burned myself playing that. I won some games as well, but I think you shouldn't really risk anything if you can win a solid f-pawn. Just win the f-pawn. But okay, knight takes f7, forking queen and rook. And the problem is that Black doesn't really have to play a passive move here. Black doesn't have to move the queen. Black has a very aggressive move, and the move is bishop takes f2. And now one sideline I would like to go over first, which is basically a draw, and there has been one game which was a draw from that position, is when king takes f2. And this is very much an inferior move. By far the best move is king to f1, just ignoring the fact that Black tried to sacrifice his bishop and getting away from all of these checks and still keeping your fork on the queen and the rook. That's the best move. But let's say you take, which is still better for white, but well, not as much. If you turn on the engine now, this is all zeros almost. White is a smidget better, and white doesn't really have any advantage here. And now the position continues with knight to e4 check, the point of the bishop sacrifice, king to e3 attacking the knight, queen to h4, and this is all the main line, which is basically all zeros. g3, knight takes g3, h takes g3, queen to d4 check, king to f3, d5. And now if you count the material, black has 2 rooks, bishop and knight, and the queen. White has 2 rooks, 2 knights, and 2 bishops. So black still has to regain his material here, because black is currently 2 pieces down. However, the engine will tell you that the position is equal. White is slightly better. That means that black has enough compensation for the pieces, and you can see that he is going to get them back most often. Now the position continues with rook to h4. That's the best move, gaining a tempo on the queen, preventing the queen from taking on c4 immediately, and black has to react with e4 check, king to g2, and the best move for black here is castles. Not taking the knight immediately, but putting his king to safety. The knight is going to fall probably anyway. And now bishop to b3, saving the bishop. That's the best move. If in this position black takes the knight, then this is just losing because of queen to h5, so you can't really do that. So castle, saving the bishop, bishop to b3, rook takes f7. And now, 2 bishops and the knight, 2 rooks and the queen for white, bishop, knight, 2 rooks, queen for black. Black is a bishop down. The pawn situation, white has 5 pawns, black has 7 pawns, so 2 pawns for the piece. The problem is that white's light squared bishop is really blocked down, and it doesn't really have an influence in the game. So you could say that the piece sacrifice is justified. The engine agrees, the engine thinks it's equal. Now the position continues. Rook to f4, rook takes f4, gf4, knight to e7, bringing the knight into f5, knight to c3, developing the pieces, and the more pieces white gets to develop, the position gets more and more favorable for white. So even though the engines think this is equal, I would still give white a huge edge. In fact, somewhere around here, after c6, d3, the engine starts to prefer white as well. And now if I turned on the engine, it's +1.5. So not even this line in which white captures on f2 after the bishop sacrifice is playable for black, in my opinion. Of course, white could go wrong on each move, and this is very risky for white. But if you know how to play this position, if you know how to play this position, then it's better for white. Now let's go over the best move, and this is what really, I would say, ruins the Traxler counter gambit for black. So knight takes f7, bishop f2 check, and simply king to f1, ignoring the fact that black took your bishop and just moving away. Black has no checks now. Now black's best move is queen to e7, saving the queen, and white captures. Knight takes h8. And now if you count the material, white has 7 pawns. Black has 7 pawns, white is a rook up. Of course, white is going to lose the knight, which is stuck on h8, but still it's going to be an exchange up. So now black's best try here is d5, e takes d5, knight to d4, and don't be scared when I turn on the engine, it's +4, and this is on move 8, so the engine gets confused sometimes analyzing this position, and the evaluation can go up and down, and in black's favor, in white's favor, because the position can get very tricky. However, objectively white is better, and white is material up, and white's king is horribly unsafe, but white can defend. Now, of course, you can see that this position is too scary for white, and that black could have a huge attack, and one wrong move could mean that you lose the game. But king to f1 is the best move, and I would advise you to play that. So let's continue. c3, chasing the knight away, and black ignores it, because of course black is sacrificing everything. Queen to g4, tempo on the queen. Queen a4 check. The bishop has to return. If knight here, then white can capture here, I believe, and well, let's go over that. Here's an example of how white could go wrong. Let's say the knight covers here and white captures with the king. This is, I think, just losing for white because of queen to h4 check. And let's turn on the engine, in fact. Yeah, this is minus... No, it's all zeros now. It was -3.5. Queen to h4 check, all zeros now. Well, the engine, as I said, can go up and down, but this is fine for black, and white could be in a lot of trouble if he plays a couple of wrong moves. Let's say g3, queen check. Where does the king go? I mean, this does look really risky. This is a mate in 4 now, and yeah, you can see that white can go badly wrong. So this was just an example. So after queen to a4 check, let's say knight to d7, which is a bad move. Now the engines well, okay, it's complicated, but you can go wrong. Just remember that rarely should you take this bishop. I think that this just doesn't work. Let's find a better move. Okay, let's find a better move. I'm actually confused now. You can see that the engine changes its mind constantly. Let's go over here. Queen to a4 check. Okay, bishop to d7 is what I thought was the best move, and now queen to a3, knight to c2, queen e7, king e7, king f2, and knight to e4 check. I thought this was best, and white is winning. But after queen to a4, let's investigate this move. Knight to d7. Okay, king takes f2. Apparently the best move. All zeros. And now black is winning. This is really strange. Okay, queen here, g3, queen check, king to e1, queen to f3. Can you see this evaluation going wild on the right side of the board? I really have no idea what the evaluation is here. Okay, let's say rook to f1, queen e4 check. What's going on? I have no idea what's going on. It's going from 0 to +5 to -10 to +13. Okay, let's say king to f2. Let's follow the line. Castles. +11. What? Okay, knight here. Rook f8. King here. Knight check. Rook takes. Bishop takes. Queen takes. Yeah, this is just lost for white. How can white defend this? This is really strange. Yeah, I just never looked at the move knight to d7 in so much detail. I thought it was an inferior move, because after queen to a4, bishop d7 makes a lot of sense. Now the engines think that queen to a4 is a horrible move, so let's go back. c3, chasing the knight away, is fine. Bishop to g4, okay. Now it says that it's +4 after queen to a4. Let's see, queen to a4, and now it goes -4. Okay, this is weird. Okay, knight to d7. Do I have to take the bishop on f2? Okay, let's find a better move. Is there a better move? Okay, king takes f2, queen to h4. I don't think this could be defended. Is g3 the only move? Queen f6 check. King to e1. Queen to f3, rook to f1. Queen e4 check. King to f2. Castles. Is there anything better than knight to f7? Okay, what if I take this knight? Okay, takes. Rook f1 check. Rook f8 check. King to g1. Queen takes here. I don't think this could be defended. I really doubt that this can be defended. Is this a draw? No, it's not a draw. Black is winning. I'm sorry about this, but I've never gone so far in depth with the move knight to d7. Apparently, here white is much better. After knight to d4, can we find a better move than c3? I thought c3 was the best move, because now after bishop to g4, queen to a4 is supposed to be the only move. But, okay, look at the evaluation. c3, the best move. Bishop g4 chasing the queen away, and now the engine recommends the move queen to a4, and after the move is played, it changes its mind completely. So is there any other move? I don't think there's another move. There's no other moves. Queen to a4 is the only move. Bishop to d7 is better for white because of this variation. So this is definitely better for white. But queen to a4, knight to d7 is supposed to be all zeros here. And now once you take on f2, it's lost. Okay, so should white really just take the bishop on the previous move? Here bishop takes f2, king takes f2. I just thought that the variation was playable. I didn't calculate the move knight to d7 precisely. If the move knight to d7 is winning for black, then white is almost forced to take on f2. Okay, let's go back. Knight takes h8, d5, e takes d5, knight to d4. Is there anything better than c3? What if I take the bishop now? I guess that must be losing. Takes. No, white is better. Okay, bishop here now. Queen to e1. Knight takes here. Okay, I'm giving up the rook anyway. Who cares? Bishop check. King here. Where do I move my queen? Queen to f1. Knight takes rook. Okay, what's the material situation? Let's not count the h8 knight because it's going to fall. Queen, rook, bishop, knight for white. Queen, rook, two knights for black. But the knight on a1 is really loose. White has 6 pawns, black has 6 pawns. Is this a draw? Okay, so yeah, wow. Okay, so let's go over that once again. Knight takes h8, d5, e takes d5, knight to d4. I thought c3 was the best move, and the engine gives that as the best move, but it's really complex. c3, bishop to g4, queen a4 the only move. Now, apparently, white is lost after knight to d7. Is king takes f2 forced? What if I take the knight here? Bishop takes, black is threatening checkmate. Now white is better. What? I need a stronger engine for this. Okay, let's allow the engine to run for a while on knight to d7. I just wanted to go more in depth just to make sure what's the correct evaluation. So knight to d7, king takes f2 is supposed to be the best. cd4 is apparently better for white, but so okay, king takes f2, queen h4 check. This doesn't make any sense. g3, queen f6 check. But I don't think this is defensible. How can this be equal? Is there really a move to draw this position? No, now it has changed its mind to -5. Okay, so let's just see what was played in the live book. Okay, king to f1. Let's turn on the live book. Queen to e7 was the best move and the most often played move. In fact, there are 16 games with knight to h8. Now 15 games with d5, e takes d5, the only move, knight to d4, the only move, 7 games with d6, 3 games with c3, 2 games with h3. And after c3, black won 2 games, and one of the games was a draw. So okay, and with d6, white wins every game except for one game was a draw. So okay, let's change the tactic here. Okay, d6, d6 I guess has to be played, and now king takes f2, and now bishop to g4, queen to f1, king to d7, bishop to b5 check. Yeah, I guess this is the way to go. So the move c3 should be avoided. Apparently, the mistake I made was the move c3, which I really thought was the best move because I didn't see how dangerous knight to d7 was. I didn't see that this combination actually doesn't work because black gets to remove all of his pieces from the back rank and getting ready to castle and to bring his rook to f8, and the queen is coming to h4. So this is really scary. So don't play c3. So okay, d6, d6, king here, bishop here, queen to f1, knight takes. Yeah, there's no problems in this line. So d6 instead of c3. I'm sorry for the complication, guys, but I really wasn't aware of how knight to d7 was, of how strong knight to d7 was. So let's go over that again. e4, e5, knight takes f7, bishop takes f2, king to f1. Okay, here d5, knight to d4, and now c3, which the engine thinks is best, but then can't figure out the position, really shouldn't be played, because even if white is better, it doesn't matter what the engine says. I think it's too risky, because I really can't understand how to defend this. Okay, c3, bishop g4, queen a4, knight d7. You're forced to take on f2, but now after here and g3, there's no way to hold this position. I just don't see a way to defend. This just can't be defended. Yeah, this is just horrible. At least black has a draw. Yeah, it just can't be played. Okay, it's mate in 5 here. So okay, c3 should be avoided. I'm going to try to figure out what the hell is wrong with that move, and is there a way to hold the position. Apparently nobody ever held it before in high-rated games. But for now, let's stick to the move d6. And now I recommend the move d6. So d6, king takes f2, bishop to g4 now, queen to f1, king to d7. And this position is much better for white, +7 or +8. Yeah, I have to say this is the first time I ever studied a position while recording a video. I'm sorry, it's never happened before, but I'm actually glad I corrected the mistake. And let me know what you think of the move. Try to find a continuation after 9 c3 for white, which doesn't lose. I just couldn't find it. I'm going to write something in the comments below if I find something further on the way. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you got something from this video on the Traxler Counterattack. I definitely have. I've just rejected the main move, which I would have played in my game. Okay, very strange. Thanks for watching. Let me know which variation you like best. I still like bishop takes f2. Bishop takes f7. Because I think it's much safer to play, as you could see from the video. Let me know what you prefer playing, and let me know how you counter the Traxler counterattack. Stay tuned for more chess, and see you later. Bye bye.